All right, APUSH students, this is your Unit 3 study guide video here. And let's jump into it. This is the road to the revolution and early government. Let's go back to the navigational acts in the 1660s and how limiting colonists on where they could do trade with, who they could do trade with, really helped set them on the road to revolution. Eventually, in 1763, we get the Proclamation Act of 1763. Which followed the French Indian War, of course. And here the British are putting a limit on colonists, saying they can't move west of the Appalachians. That's done to avoid conflict with Indians, but the colonists don't like it very much. And it certainly adds to the independence movement that is slowly beginning to grow in the colonies. You would eventually, of course, get the Revolutionary War. In that, we needed Franco-American help, the Franco-American Alliance. Without France's guns and aid, their money, it would have been impossible to beat the British Empire. And remember that we outlasted the British Empire. It was a war of attrition that we won. We rewrote the rules. We used guerrilla tactics of natives against the British. I mean, there were a lot of things that led to America winning the Revolutionary War. And, the government coming in after that, of course, was the Articles of Confederation. And we know the Articles of Confederation were very weak. The biggest weakness was that they didn't have the ability to tax, and America was in debt following the Revolutionary War. So this inability to tax really crippled the Articles of Confederation. Also, not having an executive branch was kind of rough. I mean, how are you going to deal with another country if you have 13 senators? Who has final say, who has more leeway? We were just scared of a central government for sure, and Articles of Confederation was really never going to work. So we're going to have to get, of course, we're going to have to ratify the Constitution, and the ratification process for the Constitution wasn't easy. You had things like the Federalist Papers being published to support ratification of the Constitution, the fact that we need a stronger, more centralized government. You had John Jay and Hamilton and people like that anonymously writing in the Federalist Papers. But some people were against a stronger government, such as farmers in isolated spots out in the country. They don't trust a strong government. Very conservative, of course. In the end, it's going to take, and this is a Jeffersonian. Him and others had the idea that we needed a Bill of Rights to tack onto the Constitution so that it might be ratified, because they're states' rights people, and they don't want states' rights being trampled upon by a strong central government. So in their mind, the Bill of Rights is going to protect the people of America from their government. And that's the whole purpose of it. They also set forth the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, Jefferson and Madison do, and said states could decide if an act was constitutional or not. And if it wasn't constitutional, then states could choose not to follow it. We'll talk about how the judicial branch really gets final say on what is constitutional or not. Also, in the early days of our republic, our young republic, Alexander Hamilton puts forth his financial plan. In this plan, he felt that that the national government needed to fund the national debt, that we needed a whiskey tax that would get money from the frontiers people. Also, we know that led to the Whiskey Rebellion that was later put down by George Washington. Hamilton is advocating a Bank of the United States, the BUS, and he thought that the national government should assume all state debts. He's doing all of this to try to establish financial stability and credit for our new government, because he sees it as it's the only way that we can build. But he's not going, because there's so much secularism already in America, he's not going to be able to get his financial plan passed without a compromise. And you know that Jefferson's an enemy of Hamilton, and he's the big states' rights guy, but he's also a Southerner. So they get the new capital moved to the South, outside of Maryland, and we get the creation of Washington, D.C. So that compromise is going to allow Hamilton's financial plan to go forth. And this is a time period of compromises. The Constitution is full of compromises to make it happen. And you had the 3/5 compromise, which was how do we count slaves towards population if one of the houses of Congress is based off of population and one of the houses of Congress is based off of one vote per state? How do we count Southern population? Well, 3 out of every 5 slaves will be counted. Will be counted. So a lot of compromises there. Keep that in mind when you're taking your test and when you're examining all this. And the Revolutionary War put forth this, and the Constitution put forth these. They weren't brand new, but a reemergence of some ideas, and some of it was new, right? Federalism, the shared power between state and central government. You also had a movement towards women's rights. All men, the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal. You had women who were reminding men. Mercy Otis Warren is one of the early women's rights advocates, and she actually had a big role in the war, the Revolutionary War. She's one of the early ones. And then Abigail Adams famously calls out her husband in public and says, "John, don't forget the ladies." So their rights are going to come slowly, but they are influenced by the Declaration of Independence and these new ideas of a republic. And we will eventually get around to women getting their rights, of course. There's a big focus on Republican motherhood in this time period in the early republic. And in the early republic, the idea is that women would raise their children to be virtuous citizens of the republic, that's the best thing a woman can do, that she is predisposed to being more virtuous than her husband anyway. And, so she should stay at home and try to keep the sons and daughters and make them better people than what the husband could do. You had some rebellions. Shays' Rebellion goes back a little bit during the Articles of Confederation time period. And you had these debt-ridden farmers in Massachusetts who are attacking the cities. And the Articles of Confederation aren't really able to do anything about it. It was one of the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. Sorry, some of this is sort of out of order, but don't forget the Stamp Act, too. And the purpose of the Stamp Act, it's following the French Indian War, and it is a direct tax to pay for the deployment of British troops in America. Now, of course, our first president of this new republic is George Washington, who's unanimously elected. And then we will get, of course, after him, John Adams. And then you have this election where John Adams is defeated by Thomas Jefferson, and we get the first real true transfer of power in America, this bloodless revolution of 1800, if you will, that one party gave up power to the other party. And that was very important. When Washington stepped down, he didn't have a party, so it was just him stepping down. And so here we go with these political party things. So when John Adams is defeated and accepts his defeat at the hands of Thomas Jefferson and cedes power to him, that's kind of when we knew that the government was going to work. Federalist Papers, again, another thing about them, to try to ratify the Constitution, the Federalist Papers made clear that they felt that a large republic was the best government to ensure the rights of the minority. Now, the Constitution is going to give us an electoral college, and it's important to note that is really the Founding Fathers not trusting common people and uneducated people. They don't want a majority wins rule. So the electoral college, it protects the minority, but it's really because they don't trust, the average common person to know about politics and how to run a country and things of that nature. All right. That, I think, is everything that you need to know to be successful on this test. So it'd be a good idea to listen through this probably a couple times and write some notes down about it. Good luck. Hope you do well on your test, and I'll see you in class.